Hello everyone, Namaste. Welcome to another edition of Empowering Conversations by Empower India, co-powered by the Filmsters. My name is Disha, the Communications Manager at Empower India, and I'll be your moderator for this conversation in celebration of World NGO Day, or should I say we are celebrating it in advance. So NGO Day is celebrated on 27th Feb every year. And to start the conversation, to tell you about why we are having this conversation and with whom we are having this conversation. First, a little about us. Empower India has been working over 30 years to empower women and girls in rural communities. We focus on essentials like sanitation, education, and life skills. But more than that, we are about creating opportunities for women and girls to thrive. And this series, Empowering Conversations, is one of the ways we bring important topics to the forefront. Now, while doing my research, I've read that there are around 1 crore NGOs worldwide, and in India alone, we have 33 lakh. And I feel like that number is massive. And there's so much happening on field in the NGO world, but it's often, it goes unnoticed or unheard of. But at the same time, many NGOs and social workers focus on action and they let their work speak for themselves. But today we feel we should flip the script and focus on how words can inspire these actions and drive change. So think this conversation as a playbook for understanding the NGO world, how it started, how's it going, how it has adapted over time, and how it can continue to grow and thrive and make a larger impact on the society. So we'll dive into the challenges, the lessons learned, and like a playbook and ingredients that makes an NGO successful in creating lasting change. And to help us unpack all of this, we are joined by two incredible change makers. We have Dr. Madhav Chauhan. Now, Madhavji doesn't need an introduction, but whoever is not aware and who are meeting him for the first time, Dr. Madhav Chauhan is the founder of Pratham. He's a social activist dedicated to education. He's a former chemistry professor. He shifted to education in 1989, working in Mumbai slums and shaping national policies. With multiple prestigious awards like the Wish Prize and SCORE Award, Madhavji continues to drive innovative solutions for India's underprivileged children. And alongside him, we have Anamara Baig, CEO of Empower India, with over 15 years of experience and in program and implementation and community empowerment. She leads Empower India with its initiatives like Setu, which equips rural adolescents with life skills, and other programs like WASH and financial literacy. And I would like to tell that her passion for empowering adolescents is the heart of her work. And so, thank you so much, Madhavji and Anamara, for joining us today on this important conversation and celebrating NGO Day.
Thank
Thank you.
you. I just want to
Thank you
add
so much.
here that this conversation is especially it's very special for me because the audience who's listening may not know, but Dr. Chavan, Madhav, for me, Madhav sir, is my mentor. He's the reason I am here today, and everything I know, most of it is by observing him. And I've had the privilege of working very closely with him for many, many years. And I would say most of the things I know today are for him, by him, sorry. So thank you, Madhav sir. It's been a great journey with you, and I'm so excited to have this conversation today.
I'm excited to have this conversation as well.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Disha,
How many years ago did you quit Pratham?
2018. So
Only.
10 years with you.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Please tell
before
us.
we start the actual conversation, Madhavji and Anamara, I would like to know from both of you and hear your thoughts. Like, what does being a social worker mean to you, or how do you describe a social worker?
You want me to start?
Yes, Madhavji, please, you can start.
So, many years ago, when I started working in this sector, some people used to walk into my office in Shell Colony, Chembur, and say, I want to be a social worker. I said, what is a social worker? I used to ask this question. And people couldn't say what a social worker was and what a social worker was not. But after you had some conversation, basically people meant that social worker means I work voluntarily, I don't earn any money, I serve the society and so on. I said, so your work is social work? He said, well, I earn some money, but that's not necessarily social work. I said, okay, well, the guy who sweeps the street, is he a social worker? His work or her work has a social impact. If he wouldn't do that, then streets would be not clean. So what is all work is social. If you start there, then there is nothing specially significant called social worker. Huh? But what we
Right.
mean by social worker is in the social sector. It's not even for profit or not for profit because now it can be either as long as your work has social impact and not necessarily, but very difficult to say. I'm getting entangled myself. So uh, social worker is not a special category. That category stopped existing a long time back. No,
Disha, I
Disha didn't hear me.
oh ho ho. There is some. I think she'll join back. I think there's some kind of glitch. Sorry about that. I also
Okay.
I also
Now it says we are live.
yeah, we are live. We are live.
Okay, all right.
Disha will
So
join
you and
back.
I can have a conversation. So now
Yeah.
you tell me what you think is social worker.
Well, I mean, you're right about that, that it's a very ambiguous thing. Anybody doing work that's impacting society is basically a social worker. But in the general sense, I think when you say social worker, it is about, being part of the development sector and, being part of an NGO. So, yeah, I mean that I think the general term or the general definition understanding is of a social worker is that you're part of the NGO, you are doing some community based programs, etc. So yeah.
Disha is not here, but I can tell you that
Yeah.
when I started working in this sector,
Yeah.
uh, call it development sector, all these words are
Yeah.
new. All these words are
Hmm.
new.
Yeah.
When I started working, there were people who call themselves social workers. I'm a social worker. What
Yeah.
is a social worker? I work for the people. But, so it was very vague as to what a person was, what a social worker was.
Yeah.
Uh, and social workers very often were not accountable to anybody. They just did some work. They went to communities, they went to schools, and they helped
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah.
That's how it was. Then the government started, well, the government was already funding some work done by such social workers, and we had to apply. And the name, they said, what is your voluntary agency called? So the organization that we belong to was called Voluntary Agency, or VA. Okay,
Right.
the word NGO was not very popular in those days.
Yeah.
Then suddenly, at some point, people started calling these some organizations NGOs, and by differentiating between VA and NGO, NGOs were typically, not necessarily, but typically organizations that received foreign funds. This was after
Oh.
75, I think. Yeah. So among development workers, there were a lot of people who would say, "You are an NGO, we are a
This
voluntary
is the
agency." It was again not very clear,
uh
but the oldest term was social worker, then
yeah.
voluntary agency, where you had to register yourself and you had to apply for funds from the government, and
Yeah.
then you had NGOs,
Yeah.
which were Disha. The conversation is almost over.
I'm so sorry. I don't know if this happens quite often with me on live, but
Yeah.
so sorry. I was
That's
thrown out
okay.
of the studio. But please continue, sir.
So, so the term NGO changed uh, many things. Then
Hmm.
after NGO, what are we called now?
We no NGO or a non-profit organization.
Not for profit. So there was
Yeah.
no. The term not-for-profit, for-profit distinction was not there.
Was not
I mean,
there.
you can't be, you are a for-profit organization, meaning you are a commercial organization.
Correct.
But not-for-profit sort of said, actually, I keep joking that a lot of companies that are not-for-profit are not for, well, are not for a loss, are not-for-profit. Uh, I messed it up.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying.
So commercial companies often are losing money, so they are
Yeah.
not for profit anyway.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
true. Yeah. Any loss-making company is not for profit,
Absolutely, and
technically.
companies are floated to make a loss,
Yeah.
or the investor is willing to take the
Yeah.
losses,
Yeah.
but they are
But
not
they're
called.
commercial.
They are commercial, exactly.
Yeah. So if I'm what you're saying, sir, if I map the progression, it started with voluntary organizations, then it went
So
to
no, started with social worker. So it goes way
social.
back
Huh.
in India. In India, in the state of Maharashtra, in the areas where you work, Konkan and so on, many people started their own schools. In Maharashtra, there are a lot of government aided schools. And in the
Right.
old days, as early as 1920s, people started setting up schools because there were not enough schools according to them. And these were social workers. They
Yeah.
built schools. People contributed their labor, voluntary labor, and they built schools. People wrote textbooks. The government was not printing textbooks. And so,
Yeah.
education movement in Maharashtra, cooperative movement in Maharashtra. I can talk about Maharashtra. I'm not so familiar with everywhere else.
Yeah.
All these were voluntary actions. And
Right.
Gandhiji, I believe, is famously known to say that Maharashtra is a rich soil, fertile soil for voluntary agencies, voluntary workers.
Wow. Wow.
So, yeah, I suppose that. Anyways, you're
I
saying.
Yeah, I actually always wondered why Maharashtra, maybe what you said just now answers that question, why Maharashtra is an anomaly from other states. After grade 7, like middle school, secondary, everything in Maharashtra is non governmental in the sense semi aided. And I
Yeah,
always wondered why that is. So like 8th, 9th, 10th is all mostly across Maharashtra is government aided schools. It's not
yeah,
government schools. So maybe what you're saying is the reason for that, and I always wondered why that's the case.
yeah.
Yeah. No, so coming to what you're saying, if you map the progression, you start with social workers, then you have voluntary organizations, then you have your NGOs, then it came to not for profit, and now it is your social enterprises
Social entrepreneurs.
so social entrepreneurship. So that is
Yeah.
the latest sort of
So these
progression
are
in our world.
all new words keep coming up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then social entrepreneur, it's not very clear whether it's a for profit or not for profit.
Profit, not for profit, correct.
Yeah.
As long as the social impact, then
Yeah,
it can be. But then there are plenty of other very profitable companies that are also, I mean, in a sense,
absolutely.
creating social impact. So the lines are quite murky, actually.
Yeah. We are not letting
Um,
Disha talk.
yeah.
No,
Disha,
no,
the floor is
I
yours.
actually wanted to. Thank you so much. I actually want to talk about that. When you talk about like how the things have changes, like you spoke about from from NGOs to non-profit to social and entrepreneurs right now. There's also a scene of tech. There's also a lot of tech that has advanced as we have seen over the years. So, how can Madhavji, this is especially for you, how can NGOs stay, innovative while doing the personal and ground grassroots work that they are doing in
Uh,
today's time?
in fact, that's the only way they can be innovative. If they don't do ground level work, if they are not connected with the ground level problems, then what is the innovation for? The innovation is for to find solutions, right?
Yeah.
So they have to say, okay, this is not working. How can I make this work? And
Hmm.
doing that is innovation. It's not always technology. It's not always digital technology. And now somehow people get enamored by technology, digital technology, and they think anything in digital technology is innovative. That's not true. You
Or would
you could,
work.
or yeah, or would work exactly. So so innovative is when you look at a problem and say, how can I change something like this and make it useful? How can I make it? It's a simple thing. We are working with Anganwadis, and one of our colleagues came up with the idea. I don't remember who. Uh, that the way to make the Anganwadi effective is not only to train the Anganwadi worker, but to uh, create mothers groups and meet the mothers groups every week, give them ideas, ask them to practice, and then ask them to help with the well, they should be responsible for their children's education. Now, Anganwadi is 2 hours of play and thing, but the mother itself can take charge. Now that's an innovation. Nobody's going to talk about it, but it's a very simple innovation. Yeah.
Makes sense.
So innovation doesn't. Then in this, if you think, okay, you can send technology messages.
Hmm.
Uh, Technology can be used to send messages to the mothers groups. Yes, but that's not a great innovation. The innovation is to say that I'm going to make the mothers. I'm going to empower your empower term comes in handy there. So I'm going to empower the mothers to help the uh, children's education.
Makes sense.
Sorry, if I
So,
may just add there, I was thrown out for a minute. In the same vein, Madhav, sir, what you said about the Anganwadi and the mothers groups, I would say that even, for example, the initially when your self-help group started, that was
Yeah,
also in a sense innovation, right? Bringing the
absolutely.
women together for financial sort of literacy and talking to them about that savings, all that, a very
Yeah,
creative innovative idea. So it's not necessarily what you're saying only tech can be innovative.
yeah.
There are plenty of, yeah.
Tech is assistance. Within tech, what is innovative? You have to see what
Yeah,
is it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So
But I think because I have some context and background working with Madhav sir, I would think that tech would be, and I have seen it, that he's been one of the first adopters of tech in the development sector because that started many like 10, 12 years ago. But for him particularly, personally, I would say that like there was so much of the Pratham has always sort of worked at scale, and that has only come with innovation, right? Innovating the models and how you're going to implement it at scale. And I think one of the reasons why Madhav, so you got so attracted to tech is because it brings an element of ease in scalability, and
Yeah.
that was something that Pratham was anyways used to. So it became such a powerful tool for you to just sort of build it into your programs, right?
yeah, well, one thing I discovered while dealing with technology in the education sector is that children take to technology, and this was known. Children learn technology really quickly,
Hmm.
and the technology has other advantages sometimes, sometimes not. But the biggest advantage is that the children see the magic of technology, and they feel it's magical and they start applying it. It may not necessarily be. So, for example, will you teach mathematics with technology? It can be used to teach mathematics, basic arithmetic, and so on. It is done. But the real advantage is that the child starts getting interested in what the technology is doing and feels motivated to learn and do things.
Right.
Makes sense.
Okay.
So, there's also a lot of collaboration, like in this whole thing. If we talk about text, or like you said, Madhavji, about innovative ways of collaborating with other people, like we did with Anganwadis. So, Like that, we also have collaboration with like NGOs collaborating with NGOs, or NGOs collaborating with government bodies or businesses. And that collaboration is also important in some way or the other. So, how do you feel this collaboration is working together in the current scenario or today? Or how do you feel like that would look like in the coming years?
Well, collaboration is a nice idea, but actually, the world of NGOs and not for profit work is very competitive. Everybody is running after money, and especially over the last 20 years or so, the there's been money coming into this sector on a large scale. Uh, excuse me. Um the money coming from overseas sources and money coming from India. And so NGOs are always vying for the attention of the funders. Excuse me. Hmm. Uh, so while we talk about collaboration, there's also competition, and then the two have to be balanced. How do you balance that? So, for example, I may find it very easy to collaborate with a sector, with an organization that's working in the health sector and not education. But in education, if I'm to collaborate with another organization doing similar things, because the problems are similar or even identical, and I have a solution and the other guy has a solution. It may not be radically different, but we both land up in front of the donor and saying, "Fund me, fund me." So there is a problem in that. When we started out in as Pratham, there were not that many donors. We started in '95. I believe you also started in '95. 30 years, you said.
Yes,
93.
that's right. 93. Yeah.
Anamara?
Yeah, I'm here. I think Madhav sir is frozen.
Oh, no worries. I think he'll be joining in some time. I think these technical glitches are very high today on Monday morning.
I know. I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually Monday morning blues. It's Monday morning technical glitches this time. So, Anamara, the same question to you. How do you feel like these collaborations would look in the coming years? Like NGOs collaborating with NGOs, or NGOs with government bodies, or
So,
NGOs with key businesses?
right. So what Madhav sir said made I think that is one of the challenges that the sector in general faces,
Hmm.
where you have the problem is the same, but the approaches are different
Different.
from organization to organization. So, and every I would say that every organization might feel like, okay, my solution and what I'm putting out there is better, or they are just tied to the way they think. And so what happens is that it becomes much harder to collaborate with other NGOs from that in that respect. So even with a similar problem, uh, when you look at impact assessment, so
Hmm.
all like there is no one platform where all organizations working in the same space will agree that this is the best way to assess impact. And
Yeah.
like Pratham has a different way of, they're all doing education, but the way you do so, you assess impact changes, and that kind of makes it a little more challenging to kind of work with other organizations. Having said that, I would say where collaborations with corporates are concerned or governments are concerned, they are not coming with their own, they do have their own broad ideas, but essentially it's the organization or the NGO bringing in the solution. So, from that respect, I would say it's easier to work um, with them.
Hmm.
But there are many large collaborations that have come in play where um, they have sort of brought out that intention of working, collaborating together. There is a network for life skills, there's a network for other maybe vocational training, where they're sort of pooling in their intelligence, their resources, and saying, okay, let's come up with a standardized testing tool, a standardized I don't know, like different things, or curriculum. But it's happening, but it is not really there yet. I don't know what you feel about it, Madhav sir.
We call it not for profit, but not for profit what? I
Hmm.
think we have to say it's a not for profit business. It's a business. Okay, you have to follow the discipline of a business. You have to prove that you are, because your outcomes have to be measured,
Yeah.
and you got to say, okay, this is my outcome. This is what I do. This is the advantage in doing it my way, and so on. If you don't have the business discipline, then people can just throw about numbers and say, I reached so many. So, for example, people will say we reached 100,000 children. But reached का मतलब क्या है? Reached or helped or taught or successfully taught what? So I think the business it has to be dealt with like a business. And
Hmm.
some people from the older generation does not do not like this idea of calling their social work or their voluntary work, naming tagging it as business.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with business. Business as usual. Business as different. Business is innovation. So yeah,
Makes sense.
If I may just add to that, Madhav sir, it's a question for you. In the same vein, a lot of times, because we are the in this sector, there are many NGOs that are stretched for financial resources. There are times when an opportunity comes your way, and you have existential issues sometimes where money is concerned. And if an opportunity comes your way, which may be tangentially related to what you're doing, or could be quite different, I think a lot of organizations are torn whether or not to take that up, because it may be a departure from their vision.
yeah.
And I think at some juncture, most organizations sort of have to answer that question. What is your take on that?
No, there is this thing called mission creep. You are doing
Yeah.
something. You are doing some work in education, and something comes up that is. So, for example, when in the early days, when we were working in the Balwadi program, early childhood education, somebody suggested that and this is a legitimate reason that the children feel lazy, they don't feel energetic, and the part of the reason for that is that there is a problem with worms or nutrition. So the government has a program in Anganwadis, for example, to give albendazole, iron, vitamin C, and so on, vitamin A. So if that was to be done, that would be entering the domain of health, and we did enter.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
later on, we found out that the two things getting mixed up was very difficult. That the health thing should be handled by professional health workers. So we
Right.
actually invited a few number of doctors to take charge of the problem
Yeah.
and set up a foundation called Niramaya Health Foundation. So it's better when it's specialized. It's better that somebody else handles it. If you want to take care of it, if you want somebody to look into those kinds of problems, then unless you have the expertise, don't do it.
Hmm.
You can invite somebody else to come and take care of the problem. You can raise money for it, but the expertise required is different.
But sometimes, so what happens is that when you are in a position where money is really scarce and you have to keep the lights on, then it becomes a very, very difficult decision that at least something is happening, you know. So, though I think a lot of NGOs go through that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, existentialists and so on. So people have to do something to keep the
Yeah,
fires burning, as you said. You have to
yeah,
do that.
yeah, yeah.
And that's why it's a business. You have to decide whether you're going to be a baniya ki dukaan or ice cream ki dukaan. So as long
Right.
as you can sell something and make some profit, you're okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that
Yeah.
should align with your vision and values as well, because
Vision and values are
otherwise,
shaped. If you only start with vision and values and think that your work is going to be shaped by your vision and value, probably not. Because
I mean,
sometimes,
yeah.
go ahead.
But there is a I agree. I mean, there is an idealistic view of things and there's a realistic view, but it has to be somewhere in the middle. It can't be on either extreme because you are working in the real world. But at the same time, I think just being too practical about it, okay, this is what it is. I don't know. It just doesn't necessarily sit with me.
Well, it depends. I mean, look, if you look at Pratham's history, our own history, we started with a tagline, every child in school and learning. There was no well in that. Learning well was added afterwards. So every child in school and learning. And within 5 years, we realized that every child in school was not the problem because enrollment
Learning
was
well
very
was
high
the
in a city like
yeah.
Mumbai, in Maharashtra, in other states as well. Some states the enrollment was not very high, but still everywhere it was above 90%. Now, if that is the case, that is not the problem. Then we said, okay, we were chasing the wrong problem.
Hmm.
Or the real problem was that children went to school but did not learn. So learning became the focus of our work. When we were doing that, somebody else suggested you are working on such a large scale, but don't you think education is the goal of jobs is more important than education? And this is whether it's more important or not, but that vocational skills did not exist and so on. So we came to Anamara and said, Anamara, rent us your place. We want to rent the place to start vocational training center. So sometimes you take different paths. Uh, it's not exactly a completely different pathway and not necessarily contradictory path, but you do something different, and
Hmm.
that's okay. That's okay.
Makes sense. And sir, if we talk about like I said before, ki there are around 1 crore NGOs worldwide and just 33 lakhs in India. So, and if we talk about from the business perspective, a lot of people are also, trying to set up NGOs or start something of their own in the social sector. So, what advice would you give to them so that they could, keep going and without burning out?
No, there are different kinds of NGOs, and if we use one term NGOs for everything, there are different NGOs. There's family trust. There are CBOs in a small village. A few people will get together and register because if you want to become a tax exempt, you want to get the tax exempt status, you want to raise funds from say businesses and so on, then you need to be registered. So registered NGOs is what you're saying, 3.3 million NGOs in India. But all are not the same. There are those which have an annual turnover of 100 crores, 500 crores, and there are those that have completely empty bank accounts. So that number is there, but it's not totally realistic. In some cases, you will find that Ganpati Mandal is registered and it
Hmm.
comes alive during the Ganpati festival, and then it shuts down for some more months. So there are different kinds of organizations, different kinds of NGOs. 1 crore that you're talking about around the world, again, similarly. So the question is, big NGOs working in education. I think it depends upon what you want to do. If you're going to raise a large sum of money and build a big empire, that's a completely different thing. So I don't think I can give one set of advice to everyone.
Makes sense.
But increasingly, compliances are becoming important. A lot of paperwork. So you have to learn about all those things. There should be some way of learning about how to run an NGO, how to run an organization, how to raise money, how to use money, how to keep track of money, how to report your work.
Yeah.
So project reports. So this is what I mean, that the NGOs are becoming entrepreneurs but businesses.
Hmm. Makes sense. And uh, when we talk about like NGOs, do you feel like is it all right now about scaling up or like creating a strong business, or you feel like still जो community based non-profits hai, they still have the power to make like impact, a bigger impact, or is it like still just about scaling up and creating the business like I said?
No,
What do you feel?
no. I was one of the first people. Well, Pratham was one of the first organizations. There were not that many organizations in India in the late 90s working, and we, in a way, you may say we were one of the first ones to work on a very large scale.
Correct.
So we could be blamed for setting the trail. Uh, and now everybody's going crazy after scale.
Skill.
In fact, in the Harvard Business School and other schools and so on, business schools, they're teaching how to scale. There are seminars on scaling. They're training people to scale. But that is not, it doesn't work that way. That you want to scale. So it's like saying, okay, big business. There are so many thousand schools, and I want to do this in so many thousand schools, and I will do it this way, and I'll go and tell people that I'm working with 5,000 schools. But to what end? What? So if you ask me, Pratham is working on scale, yes, but true scale we have achieved only in two areas, actually more now. And that scale is not because we wanted it. Is there a demand for what your product is, or are you just pushing it? That is important, because you can say that I've scaled my work. Uh, you could go out and start selling your ware, but who's
Yeah.
buying it? Right now, if I stand somewhere and start distributing things free of cost, people may take it away. It's
Yeah.
like leaflets, on the street corner, you stand and give leaflets to people. And you
Yeah.
can say at the end of the day, I gave 10,000 leaflets away.
Yeah.
Yes, you achieved scale. But did people come to you and say, give me one, I want to read what you've written? That's different. Like newspapers. Right now on the internet, I can read a lot of news. Sometimes it's something when you have to pay for the news. How many people
I'm paying for it now.
subscribe? Not many.
Yeah.
Anyway, so scaling. What is it? The scale idea came from here when we started talking about scale. The concept of scale that Pratham started with. Actually, the birth of Pratham started that way. UNICEF and Municipal Corporation and the government of Maharashtra were all coming together, and the idea was to solve the problem of education in the city of Mumbai. So at birth, the scale was defined. Is Disha around or gone? Oh, Disha's still there.
No, I'm
So,
here.
so
I'm here.
the scale was defined that Pratham would work to solve problems of education in the city of Mumbai. And as we worked, it grew and grew and grew. Because then when we started doing something in Mumbai, some friends in Bangalore, some friends in Ahmedabad, some friends in Lucknow, Delhi, they started saying, why can't we do it? This is true. We didn't go out and start running branches. This is actually well known, well documented examples of people saying we would like to follow the example
Start
of Pratham.
something.
Now that is different. So in scale also you can say, okay, I am replicating, I am going to branch out and replicate my model. That's one way of doing it. The second is, I this is my model. Friends and colleagues are looking at it and saying, I want to replicate it. They replicate that. Okay. Somebody says, I like what you're doing. So I understand that early childhood education is a problem. But I don't want to work the way you do, but I'm inspired by what you do and I'm scaling up. So scaling happens completely differently. Some people, the interpretation of scaling these days is what you do, you expand. There's in Pratham, there's another one when we innovated the learning to read technique, which is now known as teaching at the right level, because children could not read even after reaching fifth grade. So we started this teaching at the right level. Now it's called teaching at the right level technique. And we said, okay, this is very effective. This is very impactful. So a friend of mine in a well-known consulting company said, you know what, uh, we should we should brand this and scale this up. Okay, so he thought I did not know what McDonald's was. This is like golden arches. So you would put up L2R and everybody would be attracted to L2R. Okay. Now, my answer to him, what happened? My answer to him was, uh, true, you want to scale it up and so on, and you want the McDonald's example, but how about we do a Chinese example? Chinese restaurant. When you go to McDonald's, the meat patty in McDonald's comes from a central location and it is defined exactly to the last T what the specifications are. But in a
Yes.
Chinese restaurant, the Chinese food, even on a street Chinese wagon, they claim this is Chinese food. Actually, it's not Chinese food. But you identify something about it, the decor, the artwork, or the menu card is the same, similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, chow mein here, chow mein here. But is there something called chow mein in China at all? Probably not. So that is called scaling up. The idea is scaled up of Chinese food is scaled up everywhere. The flavor is what the customer likes. The flavor is what the chef can make. It is not necessary that it is defined that it is going to be exactly this. Now that is the difference between scaling up, replicating, and so on. Okay.
Very
Super.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we
If
have
I may
covered
just
everything.
ask you an additional
Yeah.
question on that, sir, that um, you said that there should be a demand for the scale as well.
Yeah.
Um, but when you did it was Pratham Mumbai, then Pratham Gujarat, and then Pratham Delhi, etc. That at the time, I think that the space was less crowded.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Very, very,
so
very true.
d- so today I don't I mean, do you I wonder if we have to create the demand ourselves, because we need to kind of stand above or be heard in the din of so many uh different voices. So I wonder if there has to be we have to get innovative and creative and even sort of creating that demand for ourselves, if we have that kind of belief and passion in the model that we've created, and that we know that this is sort of going to be relevant across the board because of the problem that we're trying to solve, then perhaps we have to go out there and sell ourselves in a certain way. Like, that's a crass way of saying it, but
But this
uh,
this is where
yeah.
this is where the word collaboration comes in.
Mm.
If you have something that works really well, let's say these days people talk about social emotional learning and all that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there should be platforms, there should be spaces where people can get together and talk about what they have done openly,
Right.
freely, transparently, saying that this is the problem, this is what I do, and we should be open to exchange our experiences and our know-how with others. If that can be done, see, you have to sell to either the communities or the schools, and the customer, or you could sell to other stakeholders,
Like a
not
network.
stakeholders. What is the word? Yeah, network. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, because in a crowded situation, even if you go and start screaming at the top of your voice, not everybody is going to get it. So
Hmm.
you say something, and somebody basically says, "Okay, well, Anamara is talking through her hat. This is not true."
Hmm.
How does anybody, how does a sarpanch, for example, know that what you are saying is verified and factual or factually correct or not?
Hmm.
So it's very difficult to say. So creating platforms, create people have to hear about what you have done,
Hmm. So
and it's
target
not all.
nodes basically.
Sorry, yeah, target
Like
node.
target a node where you have a lot of people doing similar work or whatever who are convening, and then that's where you present what you're doing, so more
Yeah,
people in that space know about you.
yeah. So if you say that there is a problem that you're dealing with and that you've dealt with successfully, then other people who are grappling with the same kind of issue or problem should hear about it. And ultimately it comes down to being honest about what you do, what you say.
I really want to like share a story here. So without naming names, obviously, but so this was about, I want to say, about 10 years ago, and this is just about how I want to showcase how much Madhav sir likes, if there is a solution, how much he wants to just share it and not like sort of profit is the wrong word, but sort of not keep it to himself. So we were in Madhav sir and I were 10 years ago in New York. We were meeting some donors, etc. We had these galas and stuff. But we were meeting a US agency there who was interested in sort of collaborating. And also the head of the US agency, we were talking to her, and then she goes like, Madhav, and we were talking about actually teaching at the right level. So she's like, Madhav, this is such a good innovative thing. What are you doing? You're just giving it away. You should be charging for this stuff, like what are you doing? So Madhav sir is looking at her, and he's like, no, sorry, this is for everybody. We were talking about Africa. She was saying, this how useful this is going to be in Africa. You're just giving it away without and not taking any, not making any money out of it and all. He was like, I'm sorry, this is I think there are a lot of people doing a lot of things. We are one of them, and it is for everybody to use. So it's
No,
incredible that this is what I have seen,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
like,
But this comes from two places. One is my mentor as well, in Pratham, Mr. Vagur, the former chairman of ICICI, late Mr. Vagur, he passed away.
yeah,
He used to say that this is not ours. What we learn is for us to give away. And he meant it. He very seriously meant it. So that was one. The second thing is the donors gave us money. It was charitable money. Now I learned something using that charitable fund in creating something for the benefit of people. Now, why should I put a price on that? That's why open source. We believe in open source. What we do today is all open source. Whether
yeah,
it's tech products, whether it's learning products, it is open source. And open source has a better power because then if Anamara wants to take something that belongs to me, she's free to take it. And I tell her, look, take it away. Okay, at the most, just acknowledge that you've taken it from Madhav
correct,
Chauhan. That's good
yeah,
enough.
yeah,
You can say, and you can say that this is inspired. We are benefited long ago when we started bridge courses. I don't know whether Anamara you were around when we started bridge courses. So
yeah,
bridge courses, the word bridge course came from Shanta Sinha. In the Rangarendi district, they were MS Foundation. We learned from them. It was a rural bridge course to mainstream children who were out of school. And it was a brilliant idea and a successful program. We said, okay, we can't do it in the rural areas. We will do it in urban. We'll try to develop an urban model. And I'm saying it now on your podcast that we learned from there. We used the term bridge course. And even in those days, we said that this is all about what we learned from Shanta. But we may not have been good students. But we have to give credit to where it comes from. That is the transparency that
Important.
everybody has to have.
Correct. Yeah.
Once you have that, there's
Perfect.
no problem whatsoever.
Hmm.
And
No,
this
that
comes
makes
from
sense.
science. This comes from science research. When you write science research papers, you have to give references, you have to give credits, you have to say this is where it came from. You can't make
Yeah.
a flat statement, I learned this, I did this. No. So that is
Where did it
important.
come from? Yeah.
Yeah. How do you
Yeah.
know? Where did you learn from? That's what provides continuity to science.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Perfect.
Are we done?
Perfect. I think we covered. Yes. At last, would you like to give like any advice to budding social workers who would like to make a difference from your end? If you could, some advice or something, a parting thing, or something on World NGO Day that you would like to share, you could do that.
Actually, I've given enough advice. People who have heard carefully will get enough advice on what I've said. There's nothing more, nothing more to say. No, I don't like giving advice. Like Anamara
Oh,
said, working with me, observing, then people learn. What they take away is their business.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
I
No,
can't. I believe in learning, not in teaching. How's that?
Wow.
very
Madhav's always said that because we were sort of working in government schools and so on. So he always said there's a lot of teaching happening in the schools. There's no learning happening.
Ah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah. So I have some advice to give, but I as in the spirit of acknowledgement and credits, I'll say that this was I learned from Dr. Chavan. To your question, Disha, about anybody who's interested in the social sector, about how do you not necessarily run a successful NGO, but certain, I would say, principles and so on. So,
yeah.
one of the very important things that I learned that Madhav sir said to me directly, and which I do apply to the extent possible in my organization as well. It was one of the very big lessons that I learned. He had told me that if you give responsibility to people, right, to your team, it's very rare that they will disappoint you. It is more likely that they will live up to the responsibility that you are giving them. So you should trust people. Yes, there will be times when your trust will break, but more often than not, people will come through. So I, to a very large degree, apply that
There is a
and I follow that. Yeah. Sorry.
there is a well-known Chinese philosopher poet called Lao Tzu. Look
Yeah.
up his quote. Go to the
Yeah.
people, love them, learn from them, start with what they have, start with what they know, build on what they have, and they will say when it is done that we did it ourselves. The important thing is you have to trust them to do the
Yeah.
things, and then don't
Hmm.
worry whether they tell you whether
Give
they
you
say we
credit or
did it
not.
or credit is not important. We did it ourselves. That's great. As long
Good
as it is
enough.
done. As long as it is done.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
that is my advice.
Super. Thank you so much, Anamara. Thank you so much,
Thank
Madhavji.
you.
I think apart from the technical glitches, it was quite enlightening to hear you meet you virtually. So thank you so much for joining us today, and happy World NGO Day in advance. And
Okay.
yeah, we'll just wrap it up quickly. To our audiences, if you have enjoyed today's conversation, Please be connected to our panelists, to both the organizations, Pratham Education Foundation and Empower India. The links can be seen on your screen. And if you'd like to donate to both these organizations to support the incredible work these organizations are doing, you could scan the code or visit our website. And yeah, that's it, I guess. And thank you, everyone, for joining
Okay.
in today. Have a great week. Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, Disha. Thank you, Madhav sir. Thank you
Thank you,
for joining.
Anamara. Okay.
Bye.